I still remember the sound of the door closing, not slammed, not shut in anger, just closed, soft and final, like the end of a prayer. That sound has echoed in my head every night since, growing louder in the silence he left behind. First I thought he'd come back. He always did. But that morning was different. I just didn't know it yet. Ethan was never the kind of man who left without a word. He was steady, predictable even, the kind of person who folded laundry before work and made coffee for both of us even when we'd fought the night before. So when I woke up that day and found his side of the bed empty, I didn't panic. I figured he was out for a run, or maybe just needed air after our argument the night before. Except his running shoes were still by the door, and his car keys were gone. There was a note on the counter, just 2 words in his neat handwriting. Take care. That's it. 2 words to end 7 years of marriage. The night before we'd fought. Not a screaming match, not even something you'd call serious. It was one of those quiet, brittle fights where you say less but mean more. He'd asked where I'd been the past few evenings, why I came home late, why I'd been distant. Lied, of course. I said I was just catching up with a friend from work. But Ethan wasn't a fool. He saw through me, I think. He just didn't want to admit it. There was something about the way he looked at me then, like he was trying to memorize me one last time. He didn't say anything cruel. Didn't accuse me. He just nodded, as if something inside him had quietly broken, and said, "Okay." That word should have scared me. But it didn't. Not then. I met Daniel 6 months ago, a client from one of the real estate deals I handled. It started harmlessly, as it always does. Coffee meetings turned into late-night texts, and then into something I told myself was just emotional. But lines blur easily when you're lonely, and soon I found myself lying about where I was, deleting messages before Ethan could see them. Ethan wasn't perfect. He worked long hours, came home exhausted, sometimes forgot anniversaries. But he was good. Too good. And that goodness made me feel small, like I didn't deserve it. Daniel made me feel wanted. Exciting. It wasn't until Ethan left that I realized how deeply he'd seen me all along, and how painfully he must have seen the truth. Days passed with no word. His phone went straight to voicemail. His office said he'd taken time off. His family didn't know where he was. At first I was angry. How could he just leave like that? No closure, no explanation. Then came fear, guilt, and finally, the heavy, suffocating dread that maybe he'd never come back at all. I spent nights on the couch, staring at the front door like a loyal dog waiting for footsteps that never came. Everywhere I looked, there were ghosts of him. His mug on the shelf. His flannel on the chair. The faint smell of his cologne in the hallway. Guilt is a slow poison. It doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in, drop by drop, until it fills every quiet space inside you. 2 weeks after he left, I got a letter. No return address, just my name on the envelope. Inside were a few sheets of paper in Ethan's handwriting. "I don't hate you," he wrote. "That would be easier. I just can't stay in a place where I'm not wanted. You might think I left out of anger, but the truth is, I left out of love for you and what we used to be. I couldn't watch us die slower every day." He wrote about how he'd noticed the changes long before I did. How my laughter had become polite, how I flinched when he touched me, how the phone calls after dinner grew shorter. "I tried to reach you," he wrote, "but you were already somewhere else. With someone else, maybe. I didn't need proof. I saw it in your eyes. The kind of distance that can't be crossed." I cried until my hands shook. 'Cause he was right. Every word of it. And yet, he hadn't written where he was, or if he'd ever come back. Weeks became months. Friends stopped asking. My mother stopped calling. Everyone assumed we were separated, but no one said the word divorced. Because technically we weren't. I still wore my ring. Not because I thought he'd return, but because taking it off felt like signing something final, admitting I had destroyed something that couldn't be repaired. I went back to work, smiled when I had to, and pretended life was moving forward. But nights were a different story. Nights were cruel. I'd replay our last conversation over and over, Trying to find the exact moment it became too late. Maybe it was that night I lied. Or maybe long before that, when I started looking for pieces of myself in someone else instead of in the man who loved me. Sometimes I'd imagine him somewhere far away, starting over, maybe happier. Other nights, I'd dream of him still loving me, still hoping I'd call. I never did. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew I no longer had the right to. 6 months later I got another letter. This one wasn't from him. It was from his sister. Ethan had been living by the coast, in a small rented cabin 2 hours away. He'd been there quietly, working odd jobs, keeping to himself. Until one evening, driving home in the rain, his car went off the road. She said it was instant. No pain. Just silence. I read that letter sitting on the same couch where he used to fall asleep watching movies. My hands went numb. The words blurred until all I could see was that last morning, the door closing, soft and final. He hadn't just left. He'd said goodbye. And I hadn't even looked up. The funeral was small. His parents were polite but distant. His sister hugged me once, briefly, her voice trembling when she whispered, "He loved you. Even at the end, he loved you." I wanted to scream that I didn't deserve that love, that I'd broken it. But the words wouldn't come. After everyone left, I stayed. Sat by his grave until the sun sank. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "You were right. You always were." The wind was quiet, but I swear I could almost hear his voice. Soft, steady, forgiving. Maybe that's just what guilt sounds like when you want redemption. It's been a year now. I moved to the coast, not far from where he spent his last days. I found the cabin, small with peeling paint and a view of the ocean. His things were still there. A few clothes, a notebook filled with half-written thoughts, and a photo of us, smiling before everything fell apart. On the back he'd written, "Some love stories don't end. They just change shape." I keep that photo on my nightstand. Some mornings I wake up and almost feel him beside me. The warmth, the steadiness, the silence. And then I remember. He left in silence because he'd already said everything he could. And I never said the words that might have changed anything. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Please stay." Just nothing. People ask sometimes if I've moved on. I tell them yes because it's easier than explaining the truth. That moving on isn't always about forgetting someone. Sometimes it's about learning to live with what you've done, and the silence it left behind. Ethan once wrote, "Love isn't about who stays the longest. It's about who leaves when they've given all they can." He left in silence, not out of anger but mercy. And only later did I realize. He was never coming back.